Welcome to Between the Lines, where we explore the intersection of local and national issues. I'm your host, Eben, the editor of the Townie, and today we'll be talking about housing, which is one of the biggest issues in town. And we're joined by two guests, my friends Sean Bakhtiari and Derek Lively. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Sean is a luxury real estate agent and investor recognized by Real Producers Magazine as a rising star and top agent on the North Shore. He leads the Bakhtiari Group at Compass, recently ranked the #1 team in Newburyport, and is a co-owner of Seacoast to Summit Vacation Rentals, a top-rated vacation rental management company. And Derek Lively is a longtime Newburyport resident and commercial and residential contractor. His work spans from home renovations and additions to Plum Island projects, local restaurants and medical offices, and Boston tenant fit-outs. So we're going to start the conversation today, I guess, with the acknowledgement that the housing market locally is very unpredictable and confusing, especially to me. And none of us are real experts. Me least of all. So we'll do our best to just cover some of the subjects here and questions that might be on people's minds. Because I learn what's important to people locally by what people write in to me in the Townie, and lately, overwhelmingly, people have been writing about housing affordability. The biggest complaint I hear is, I grew up here, but now I can't afford Newburyport. And I know housing prices might be coming down a little bit right now, but in general, over the past 5 years, it seems like the prices, especially in Newburyport, have been dramatically increasing out of step with people's income. So why do you guys think that is, based on, I know you have slightly different industries, but based on your experience in this area, why is that? Why the prices that have been kind of skyrocketing?
I'll lead things off if you don't mind. I moved to Newburyport in 2016, so I've been a resident of this town for almost 10 years now. I was in Boston previously, and since I've lived here for the last 10 years, prices have just continued to gone up. It was going up before I moved here, and in my frank expectations, I expect prices to continue to inch up. I don't think home prices are going to go up at the same pace that we've seen them go up in the last 10 years. I think the last 10 years is an anomaly. I hope so, at least. But the reason why I don't think we're going to see prices continue at that pace is because we went through some economic periods, most notably COVID, when interest rates were just so low, and interest rates caused the home buying process to be much more affordable than it is today. Interest rates at the time were around 3%. Interest rates today are somewhere between, call it 6 and 7%. Now interest rates seem to have stabilized a little bit. Again, high fives, mid to high sixes, somewhere in that range. Why do I think prices have gone up in Newburyport? I have somewhat of an outsider's perspective, because even though I've been a resident for the last 10 years, I still feel new to the community in a weird way. I just think Newburyport has become so desirable for so many different reasons. It has the lifestyle that people seek. It's got the walkable downtown. It's got a social scene. It's got restaurants, shops, art galleries. It's on the coast. It's got like this coastal lifestyle aspect to it. And because of this overall desirability of Newburyport, combined with COVID and people becoming more used to work-at-home lifestyles, they've wanted to move from places like Boston and New York City to somewhat more of a quaint area that still provided these city-like amenities, but at a fraction of the price as a Boston or New York. And then, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think it's the lifestyle and the overall desirability that Newburyport has grown into, and I think will continue to grow, that's caused prices to go high. I think it's more about that, and less about, like, I don't know, government policies.
Yeah, that's great, Sean. That was awesome. I couldn't have said it better, but basically it's about the community. It's about this area, and what people bring to it, and the people that gravitate to this area. It makes it very desirable. The social scene, the ability for community. It's really unlike any place else. I've been from Massachusetts my whole life, and come from inner city, Cambridge, East Boston, worked my way up the North Shore to Marblehead. Similar feel, just not the same vibe. But we've got a real sense of caring, a real sense of community. The demographics and the ranges of people and who you draw from is really a wide range. It's a really a unique place, and there's something for everybody here, which makes it really unique and desirable. So I think that helps drive the cost of things up a little bit, because people really feel comfortable here, and they should. It's a great place.
I'll add one more comment if you don't mind. I think I'm a very simple person, so I never overcomplicate my thoughts on matters. But the more desirable a place is, the more expensive it's likely going to be. Portsmouth, New Hampshire is desirable. Portland, Maine is desirable. Newburyport, Massachusetts is desirable. This is just three of many desirable New England coastal communities. Newport, Rhode Island is desirable. They're all expensive. The other point that's worth mentioning is a supply and demand imbalance. There has been such a lack of supply of homes and such a large demand of people wanting to buy homes that this lack of supply and this growing demand has created rising prices. And the question is, are we going to see more supply? That's the main question. Are we going to see more supply in the next 6 months, next 12 months? If we see supply outpace demand, then that might cause prices to stay steady or go lower. I don't really expect to see supply outpace demand, but I do expect to see a larger increase in supply, and that to me is very hopeful. A matter of fact, I'm a big believer that this spring of 2026, is going to be a period in which we see a lot more supply of homes come to the market than we've been used to. And I think the reason why I believe this is because we've had unprecedented accumulation of snow, and I think that's caused a lot of people to just like hold off selling their houses. I also think homeowners have started to realize that interest rates aren't going to move much lower than where they are today. I think most homeowners believe it's going to stay about around this general area of, again, 5.5% to 6.5%. And now that we have this understanding and this confidence that interest rates will likely stay steady, I can now feel more confident about selling my home that I might have a 3% interest rate on, and use that equity to go buy my next place, whatever that is.
So since you brought it up, the housing availability versus demand, ADUs are one of the solutions for that. I mean, there might be many solutions, and I'm not sure what you guys think, or I'd be interested to hear what you think is the best solution, is a way of increasing housing density, because we have a limited amount of land, obviously, so ADUs allow you to build in an existing property, smaller residence. What do you guys think about that? Is that, ADUs stand for accessory dwelling units, is that the best way to add housing? Is more density better? Can that complicate lifestyle in town?
You want to take this one first?
Sure. Well, there's so many aspects to this. Between seniors growing older, trying to find, your average cost for assisted living and nursing care is upwards of $10, $12, $15, even $20,000 a month. I think that it touches on so many aspects of why it's a good idea. Yes, we are running out of land, and the balance between land and conservation and green space, and how important that is versus economically, what is the right thing to do for the individual family, and how do we prepare for the next level, the next chapter of life. And so it's a simple topic, but it really touches on so many broad areas that I think it's a smart idea. I think that it's great that I've actually seen some plans for Boston. They've handed out things, and there is no land there, but they get creative with their internal space. So you can find that space in first floor. You can find that space in a basement. You can find that space in an attic, depending on your demographic and who your target market is for there, whether it's a family member or whether it's an outsider. You can create spaces anywhere, and people are getting really creative and opening up their eyes and thinking out of the box, and it's great. I mean, it's really being very creative, and it's offering a lot of solutions for a lot of people that can't afford that next chapter and can't go to the next level. in a certain way. They have other alternatives. It's offering a great option.
So you see it more as a solution for seniors who can kind of move into an accessory unit on a family property rather than having to go to a pay for a nursing home.
That's one small
okay.
one small piece of that avenue. There are, obviously the housing market and youngsters coming up and trying to find places or buy places or thinking like that. I mean, there's so many avenues to go down that road.
So it's a versatile option.
It's a very versatile option.
Okay.
But I just happen to pick one strain of it.
Yeah, I mean, the way you phrase the question is ADUs the best option? I don't think there is a, quote, best option to tackle the lack of housing challenge that we have in the city. I just think there are options, none of which are better than the other. I think ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are a great option if a property lot allows it to be built and or placed there for additional housing needs. I think a project like Boston Crossing, in my personal opinion, was fairly successfully executed. I don't even know how many units are at that building near the train station, but it seems like there's a noticeably amount of new rental units that didn't previously exist in the town, and it's right next to the commuter rail, so that solves a lot of housing needs. And so, is ADUs the best option? I think it's a great option. I think building more dense apartment buildings, if space allows, is another good option. And I also think I'm a fan of the idea of taking existing buildings and repurposing them into smaller individual units. If one building can fit 3 luxury townhomes, is the better option 6 affordable apartments? That's the question I think I ask myself. And so there's options. I don't know which is the best option, quite frankly. But from my perspective, there's just several options.
Yeah, well, the condo versus apartment thing has been also a big point of tension, and the number of apartment buildings declining in favor of luxury, really expensive condo buildings, which I think that brings in a certain demographic, but then maybe a demographic that's grew up here or has lived here for a long time maybe can't afford to be here anymore. So I think that's another struggle. And again, there's no right or wrong necessarily, but that's another thing that I hear a lot in articles that people are frustrated about on one side or the other.
Yeah.
So what changes have you guys noticed in the local market since you've been in business, basically? Sean, you've only been here for 10 years, which that's a long time, but in Newburyport terms, that's like, oh, you just got here.
Yep.
And Derek, you have more experience maybe in the commercial space. Changes in what people are looking for, demographics, the kinds of houses that are being built, the kind of houses people are looking for, what the people that are moving to Newburyport or that are buying in Newburyport, what might be different now and what they're looking for than it was 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago.
I think, from my perspective, Newburyport now attracts a much more diverse pool of potential buyers, whereas 10 to 15 years ago, it might not have attracted the types of same buyers that it's attracting today. And those buyers are coming from a variety of different places. They're not just local, greater Newburyport-based buyers. Now we're seeing buyers, again, from bigger cities like I've already mentioned New York and Boston. Again, just to name a few of them. The other thing that Newburyport, here's a big change. Another big change I'm seeing is that Newburyport is becoming a second home destination, and I don't think it had that reputation over a decade ago. And I think it's become the second home destination more recently, again, because the lifestyle has become so attractive. If I were buying today, it'd be very difficult for me to buy a home in Newburyport that fits my needs, and that's just the harsh reality. I was quite fortunate to buy 10 years ago, prior to prices blowing up to where they are today, and I was able to refinance over the last 10 years to get myself a lower interest rate to make my housing more affordable. The entire buying perspective is completely changed today. It's much more challenging. But the types of buyers are much more diverse. They come from a wider range of places. It's not just local buyers anymore. A lot of them are second homeowners. On Plum Island, where I live, we see a lot, not a lot, but I would say we see a decent amount of people buying vacation homes or vacation rentals. And so the reason why I think people are buying their vacation home or vacation rental on the island, number one, is because there's less regulations to short-term rentals on Plum Island versus downtown. Number two, they're able to buy a second home at a higher price with higher carrying costs, but then offset that with the ability to rent it. And if they weren't able to rent it, many people wouldn't have be able to afford these homes.
You mentioned less regulations. I just want to go back to that really quick so people understand. There's less regulations for people who want to buy a property and then rent it out, like on Airbnb, than there are on Plum Island. Yet you are not allowed to do that in town. That's correct, right?
Yeah, the way I would phrase it is Plum Island has I don't want to say no, but little to no regulations on your ability to use a property as a short-term rental, sure. Airbnb, vacation rental, whatever you want to call it. Whereas if you buy a property downtown, there are stricter restrictions. There's, quite frankly, a lot of restrictions in downtown Newburyport, off of the island, that restricts people from buying a property and using it strictly as a short-term rental. I'm not in those conversations with the town, but I'm connected enough to hear things, and I believe one of the reasons why these restrictions were put into place on properties in downtown Newburyport was to help offset the rising cost of living. Whether short-term rental restrictions will accomplish that goal is to be determined. But I think that was the one of the intents behind it.
And on people buying second homes in Newburyport, but it's not their primary residence. What kind of community change do we think that leads to, if any? Because that, presumably, if people are buying more second homes and they're not using it as their primary residence, they're not full-time members of the community in a way that people who live here would have been 10, 20, 30 years ago. So does that lead to more, and then when they're not here, maybe they're renting it out, and there's a transient population coming through, maybe renting for the summer or whatever. So is that something you guys have noticed as a change, or even just as residents, especially living on Plum Island, from maybe a neighborhood where people were living there full time year round to now you see more people coming in and out every week in the summer? Has that been a shift you've noticed?
For me, it hasn't. I want to make it clear. Yes, I think there's more second home buyers, vacation home buyers. I don't know the exact data, but it's still, from my perspective, a very, very, very small portion of all the property owners in this town. So from my perspective, a matter of fact, living on Plum Island over the last 10 years, I've noticed more full-time residents than I did when I first moved here. Maybe it's because I'm just now more in the social circles. I've noticed more younger families moving to the island, more kids running around the island, playing with my kids. When I first moved here, I didn't recognize that, but I'm not sure if, Derek, you have a different perspective than me.
Yeah, no, I lived on Plum Island for 5, almost 6 years in the beginning too, and my kids grew up on Plum Island, so what a treat, what a place to be able to grow up and be free and play games like Manhunt out on the beach in the sand, and really have a sense of freedom that you really don't get in a lot of other neighborhoods and a lot of other places and communities, where feeling pretty safe, feeling pretty, connected with community, and people really look out for one another. It's really, when I grew up in Waltham back in the 70s and 80s, we had that freedom to go through the woods, freedom to go through, wherever we were going to explore. We didn't have a lot of the technology to keep us indoors as the kids do today. So it was good to see and have that experience for me and my kids, and watch them grow that way. So yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I'm glad that's still the vibe.
Yeah.
I spent 1 year on Plum Island when I was like 6.
Yeah.
My parents rented a house while they were looking for a permanent house, and it's still my favorite memory growing up. 1 year at 6 years old that I spent living on Plum Island. Yeah. And it's great. So I'm glad to hear that it's still.
I do. One comment that just came into my mind that I think is worth sharing about quote unquote investment properties in town is this. I work with a lot of investors, whether they're looking for a multifamily investment, a short-term rental investment, commercial real estate investment. Newburyport, generally speaking, isn't a market that's providing great short-term rental investment opportunities or providing great long-term rental investment opportunities. It's pricey to buy homes here, and because of the prices and the interest rates today, for an investor looking to buy a short-term rental, they're better off going to a market like Salisbury Beach, Hampton Beach, markets in southern Maine, for example. So I think there's this misconception that people are looking at Newburyport or Plum Island strictly for investment opportunities, when in reality, again, this is my opinion is that Newburyport actually isn't a great place to invest money in a short-term rental because prices are so high. And if you're going to spend $1 million on a 3-bedroom home on Plum Island, you can probably spend $650,000 on a similar size home in Hampton Beach and get similar rental income. It's a better investment. And so one of the things that I'm pretty loud about is that just because I work day to day with investors, and it's very rare that I suggest an investor client of mine to look in Newburyport to allocate their money into a real estate asset, because I do think there's better investment opportunities in markets that aren't as expensive. So I actually don't even really. This is like today's reality. I don't think that today's market, from an investor perspective, is increasing prices. I think the truth is there's a supply and demand imbalance, and many people don't want to sell because they love living here. And if they sell, they're gonna have to buy another house for more money, likely at a higher rate. The supply and demand imbalance is the big thing, and the other reason why people don't want to sell is because they just love it. Like me and my wife, we would love a bigger house. If we want a bigger house, we got to move to another town that we can afford a bigger house in. There's too many to name, but we love this town so much, so we're okay living in our house that's big enough, just not as big as we want.
Yeah, it's interesting. And going back to what we were talking about seniors earlier, I mean, a lot of seniors are aging, staying in houses that are maybe too big for them, that they don't need that space. But for them to sell that house, which is now worth a lot of money, they would now have to move. They would have to leave town because they can't just downsize for something cheaper and smaller. They'd be downsizing for probably the same price that they sold for like a $1.5 million house into a condo that's like 800 square feet and costs the same price. So I think that's the
I think if you've owned a house in this town for many years and you've realized appreciation in the value of your home over those years, you now have options. Option one is you stay in that house at whatever your carrying costs are, or you sell that house and you take the equity that you've earned and put it into another property in Newburyport. But the challenge, like you've mentioned, is the other property in Newburyport is expensive, and if you're financing it, your carrying costs are more expensive than what you probably already have. But if you've realized a lot of appreciation and that allows you to become a cash buyer on a smaller house, that actually might be a better financial move. Because if you can take your existing house that might have a loan on it, and you realize all the equity from the sale, and you put a portion of that into a cash purchase on a smaller property, you've downsized, and you've given yourself the opportunity to remove your debt or your loan, and you might be in a more comfortable financial situation, and maybe even have money left over to invest in whatever it's worth putting it in. It's so situational.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Or you move to another town.
Right. Move to Seabrook. Do you think that a lot of seniors are just hanging on to their houses because they feel kind of stuck, and that's what's causing the issue with housing demand outpacing supply?
I think it contributes to it. And it's not just
One of
seniors.
the factors,
It's not just seniors. I think most homeowners are hanging on to their properties because they bought it years ago at a lower price and likely have a lower interest rate than what they could get today. And they're in a town that they want to be in. And for them to sell that house, now they have to sell the house, become a buyer, likely with a, not to get too technical, but likely become a buyer with a what's called a home sale contingency, meaning I have to sell my house to buy my next house. It's a complicated process in most consumers' minds, but it's much more simplified when you work with an agent that can guide you through the process. But to your point, I don't think it's just seniors. I think it's most homeowners that either feel stuck, for lack of a better phrase, or just completely content with the house that they have, and they don't really want to go back on the market and compete for a property with other buyers that are also out there looking for similar properties.
Do you have Did you have anything, Derek?
No.
Okay. I want to cut you off. Do you have any advice for seniors who have trouble of affording high property taxes here? Maybe they do feel stuck. Maybe they would like to downsize, but they don't feel like they can afford it. Any strategies for them to keep in mind?
I've talked a lot, so I'm gonna take a break and then chime in.
Well, yeah. I mean, to speak on a senior level about what they can do for their own property taxes and things like that. I mean, it comes down to past individual planning. The way that this goes, I think the taxes are at a fair. They're at a decent rate. I don't know, Sean. Maybe you can speak to comparable towns surrounding, but they're not that outrageous in Newburyport as far as comparing to some other similar towns that don't offer as much. I mean, when you think about the offerings that are here and the services that are here and what we do provide, whether it's centers or whether it's parks or what we have to offer that your taxes pay for, I think this town steps up and delivers what you're paying for. And so in that way, I think that it's very comparable. If you go to a lesser town, you're paying lesser taxes, you definitely are getting, you don't see as many things offered from that town that this town offers and your taxes pay for. So one hand kind of washes the other there a little bit. But there's a lot of great resources here that we all pay for.
Actually, I really liked how you worded that. I've never really thought of it like that, but now that I've heard those words come out of your mouth, I kind of agree. And this is not a comment to defend town taxes by any means, but I do agree that the taxes for Newburyport, although high on paper, are reasonable for what you get in return. And I know this because my team is licensed in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, and so I'm familiar with many different municipalities, very few of which come close to the amenities and the lifestyle that Newburyport offers. And so for me and my wife, just speaking on behalf of ourselves, yes, we pay higher taxes. I don't think they're outrageous, especially for what we get in return for them. But to your point, Eben, they are a carrying cost, and they're likely not going down because the cost of living just keeps going up, and the cost of services keep going up. So the expectation for me over time is that taxes will continue to go up, hopefully somewhat reasonably. And your question specifically is towards seniors. Like, do we have any advice for seniors to help offset the rising cost of taxes? Is that generally the question? Or strategies? The short answer for me is no. I don't typically like to tell people what to do. I like to be a resource, bounce ideas off me. I'll give you personal opinions on things, but I mean, I think my advice is this. It's more of like setting proper expectations. My advice, and this is if I was talking to my parents, I'd say, hey, Mom and Dad, my expectation is that the Newburyport taxes aren't going to go lower. They'll likely continue to inch higher. So with the property that you own, is it worth you keeping it? Is it worth you paying down the loan? Is it worth you selling it? If you were to sell it, what are your options? Sell it, realize your equity, and maybe downsize in town or out of town. And for me, this might not be right to say, but I personally would be completely okay selling my property in Newburyport if I had to leave Newburyport, selling my property in Newburyport, and then moving to a town that is close enough to Newburyport where I still get all these amenities. I still have proximity to the river, I have proximity to the beaches, I've got proximity to the downtown social scene. Just because I live in Amesbury or West Newbury or Raleigh or Newbury, you name it, these are all great towns. Right on the outskirts of Newburyport, they have lower taxes, they have great lifestyles and communities themselves, and they're still so close to Newburyport that you're not really sacrificing a Newburyport lifestyle. I live on Plum Island. It takes me 12 minutes to get to Newburyport. If I live in West Newbury, it'll still take me the same 12 minutes to get to downtown Newburyport.
Yeah.
My proximity is the same. I just pay less taxes in West Newbury.
Beach isn't quite as nice in West Newbury, though.
But we don't get the beaches.
Yeah. Well, then that actually kind of leads into the next question, which I was going to ask, which I think your answer is going to be pretty much the same for, is people in their 30s, late 20s and 30s, who have never owned a house and they rent and they want to get into the market right now, and they're like, all right, this is the time society has told me that I need to buy a house. I should stop renting. I got to be, owning property. I need equity in something, and I love Newburyport. I want to live here. What advice do you have for people like that? Is it save for a single family? Is it a condo? Is it some other situation, ADU? Is it live in West Newbury or Amesbury or something? A lot of my friends who are in that age range have done just that. They live in Haverhill, they live in Amesbury, they live further south, maybe Beverly, and they're like, yeah, it's close enough.
Close enough. I mean, again, I don't want to take over this conversation, but I do want to preface my answer with, I cannot believe how many young people have moved to Newburyport in the last 10 years. When I first moved to Newburyport, I thought I was like the kid at the time, and fast forward 10 years, there's been, or at least me, I've noticed so many more young people, young families coming to town, and they're coming from all different places. But the Newburyport buyer isn't the average buyer. That's just the truth. The Newburyport buyer tends to have more means or more resources to afford the prices in this town. But I am surprised, I should say pleasantly surprised, with how many young people I've noticed move to this town. If you're a young buyer today, I work with a lot of young buyers as well. If you're a young buyer today, it's challenging to afford a property in Newburyport. And if you can't afford a property in Newburyport, when the little amount of inventory comes to the market, you're going to be competing for it with other buyers and maybe having to fine-tune your contingencies in some sort of fashion to make yourself appealing to a home seller. So it's challenging. So what are your options? I think there's a couple of options, none of which are the right option, but there's just good options. Number one, you can buy, if you don't have a family yet, you can have the option of buying a home and renting out bedrooms. There's a major lack of rentals available in this town. I would argue there's less rentals available than there are homes for sale when I compare them to the demand in both these categories. You can buy a property, and if you have multiple bedrooms, rent out bedrooms. And the rent that you rent out per bedroom can help you pay for the cost of carrying that real estate asset. Or you can move to a town that is close enough to Newburyport, where you still are in close proximity to enjoy the Newburyport amenities, like many of the towns I've already mentioned, and it might be more affordable to own a property outside of Newburyport, of course, bearing many factors. That's another option. Or you could, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can buy a multifamily in almost any New England town, live in one unit, rent out the other unit or units, and then when you've built up enough savings from that multifamily, then maybe you're more financially stable to buy a more expensive property in Newburyport. So there's different options.
All good options.
No option is easy, but there's options.
No option's easy. Yeah, I mean, it's like, so the thing is too, this is a privilege, right? You work hard to get here. You work hard to appreciate your surroundings, and everybody takes care of what they have here, and they'd work darn hard to get here to do that. And so it's like saying to that young person, and I don't want to insult anybody in that, but the expectation is that there's an expectation, right? Mm-hmm. So the person who comes out of a school or something that really hasn't had a life experience or work experience or experience something, you have to have stepping stones. You have to have building blocks. You have to have a first step out. You have to make a mistake. You have to learn from the mistake. You have to grow a little bit. You don't go to school and expect to land a $175,000 job when you come out of school because I have my degree, and because I have my this and I have my that. Those are expectations. The real life is that there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done. There's a lot of experience that needs to happen. Right. And you need to, these people need to understand work ethic and work hard. And that's what it takes. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of sacrifice. Especially when it's a hard thing to do, especially when you're young and you have all this free time, or you have, social life, and you want stuff to do with your friends, and you want to take vacations and long weekends and spend money because you're young. It's not wrong, right? But then you can't say on the other side, well, why don't I have this? I should have this, and why can't I get into to that town? Well, people take certain steps in order to provide themselves with the opportunity to get there. And I think like that stick-to-itiveness, hard work, ethics, morals, and set standards, and then takes some sacrifice to be able to have those things that you need. And you got to set goals and line it up. And if you have good planning, which I did not have as a child, but if you have good planning, in hindsight, right, you can always look back. But then you see the people that maybe were able to achieve those things, that maybe they did have a little assistance on the side from mom and dad. Maybe they did have that uncle that left them something to help with that block, that that step. And so sometimes they get a little assistance, and sometimes it's of their own doing. I watched a lot of self-starters and entrepreneurs succeed and stick to it and take themselves right up from no matter where they were in life and grow themselves into being a huge success. And kudos to them, because they had the wherewithal to stick to it, stick to the plan, whatever it is, and work really hard to achieve those goals and stay focused. So I think everybody has the opportunity. It's just a matter of their own path to get there.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective, because there does seem to be this expectation, at least in the things people write to me,
Sure.
that, oh, why can't I afford this town? Like, I should be able to afford it. And
Okay.
therefore, the town's doing something wrong. There's something wrong with the market conditions. Like, but you want to live in a nice place, you need to work to get there. And
Right.
that makes sense. I think the expectation comes from people's memory of growing up
Sure.
in this town when it was, in the 80s, 90s, maybe wasn't affordable, but it was much more affordable than it is now. So I think that's where the expectation piece comes from.
Sure.
They think, oh, I grew up here, and it was accessible.
Yeah.
And now, in the blink of an eye, it's not.
Yeah.
So I think
You grew up here, right?
Yeah.
You grew up here, yeah. So you have a great perspective on how Newburyport has changed.
And I've always thought Newburyport was a nice town that was more expensive than other towns. I didn't grow up in the 70s, so like, I think that there still was this concept that it's relatively blue collar, but becoming a little bit more gentrified, and down the road this is going to be a really expensive place to live. But for now, my parents can afford it, I can afford it. And then after COVID, everything just changed, seemingly really overnight. And I think people in my generation who were growing up, who grew up here and took it for granted a little bit. They had an expectation. I'm just going to live here. Nice town. I love it here. I'm going to live here someday. I'm going to buy a house, buy a condo. I don't need two incomes maybe to do that. I can do that. Now they're realizing, I can't.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's wrong?
COVID did have a massive influence, in my opinion.
Yeah.
COVID had a massive influence, and I think I'm probably just reiterating a point earlier, but I think it's because a lot of people were working from home at the time, and because they had this luxury of working from home, they no longer needed to be in the city in cramped spaces. They can get more space, but have city amenities like Newburyport offers, just on a smaller scale. And a lot of people that came from the cities with city salaries said, you know what? If I'm going to move outside the city, what are my options? They went through their options. Newburyport was one of them, and for whatever reason, they just chose to commit to Newburyport and move there. Interest rates were also extremely low. That's huge. That's a huge factor. Extremely low interest rates made housing very affordable, and extremely low interest rates caused a unprecedented increase in home prices. I can't see in my lifetime interest rates ever going below 3% again. Obviously, I can't predict the future. Maybe it does. But if interest rates go below 3%, it's likely going to have a similar influence on home prices, not just in Newburyport, but everywhere.
Yeah.
And so if interest rates remain steady and supply increases, which I hope and expect, I think that's going to lead to a better housing environment, and a more normalized housing environment, which is what everyone wants, a more normalized housing environment.
Yeah. And I'd be curious about how the kids growing up in Newburyport right now, who are going through the school system, what their expectations are going to be like when they become 25, 30, 35, and they're looking at buying a house. Are they going to have taken it for granted that, no, I can't afford Newburyport, like I'll move somewhere else and then maybe I'll save up and then I can? Because they're in the housing environment and the economic realities that they're growing up with are very different than the ones that I grew up with here. So I wonder if that expectation will change or become a little more realistic for them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's speculation.
Yeah, that is interesting to think about because I'm raising twin girls myself now that are 5.5.
Yeah,
And I think to myself too what they're gonna, what their perspective is gonna be, how their experience is gonna be. I'll tell you this, I feel so blessed that I'm in a town where if my kids want to go to the public school system, we just generally have a great public school system, which is another reason why our taxes are higher and the town's more desirable. I didn't move here because of a public school system. I moved here for other reasons. It just so happened to have a highly rated public school system, and that just makes me feel blessed that my kids have this option.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually has nothing to do with your comments, but it's just the perspective of a parent. It's just as a parent in Newburyport, I guess the point is this: Newburyport does attract a lot of young families because of the higher rated school systems, and I see that a lot in my day-to-day interactions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, I think, something that's consistent from when I was growing up. I was always aware of the school system and how it was hard. I felt like really prepared for college.
Did you go to Newburyport High School?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to college. And I was like, this is actually like pretty easy. And I think it was because high school was so rigorous. And I really appreciated the NHS school system after that.
I hope it's just as rigorous for my girls.
Yeah. So shifting a little bit to the commercial side of things, I want to pull out an article that was submitted to me a couple months ago called "Why Have We Made So Much of Newburyport Illegal?" And that article basically talks about, you don't need to go into all the details of it, but why commercial development is no longer allowed by zoning in residential areas, kind of like on High Street where Olives is and the Natural Grocer. Those businesses are grandfathered in from an older statute, but if they were to go out of business and no one picked up their lease, there would be no business there, and no new businesses can start in those areas or in local neighborhoods like the South End. When I grew up, there used to be a store called Stickney's, and that was the neighborhood South End convenience store, and we would go there after like first grade and get candy, and that's not there anymore. And this article basically argues that that's bad, that the zoning laws need to change because it creates the centralization of all the business and it kills neighborhood culture. And I thought that was an interesting question to ask. I didn't know anything about the zoning laws or the housing or anything, but it made me think about Stickney's and about the neighborhood culture that has kind of declined in favor of a more centralized town. And there's a lot of good things about a centralized town, but someone who works in commercial development, I guess, what do you think about that? Do you ever think about developments in more residential areas as being positive, or just any? And there was actually a rebuttal written to this saying that no, that would actually be terrible for the town, and then you get all these like high rises and sterile office buildings and neighborhoods, and you don't want that. So we're not going to talk about municipal policy, but just from a development perspective and a neighborhood culture perspective. What do you guys think?
It's interesting. That is, the mom and pop store, the convenience store, is something that is actually, it is fading away. Those self-owned businesses, we have great local businesses which are geared towards the downtown, but we don't have. You can look at the South End, the architecture of the South End, and you see every catty corner cut on the sidewalk used to be a store, a general store, a service store, a shoe store, but that's how the neighborhoods were founded back when the founders came here. The people were coming off the boats and they needed a leather repair guy to repair leather, and so he opened up a shop downstairs below his house, and so he built a house, and he had and then same thing with the iron maker and nails and forging, and you go up and down all these streets and the ship makers and the captain's people, and that's how this community was formed, with entrepreneurship and the need, right? So it's supply and demand, and that's how this whole country got founded and started our economic system that was here. And I think that because the people are desiring for, in this day and age, a place of peace and solidarity and community and neighborhood, I think that the centralization of things kind of morphed to make sense, as far as like, it just makes sense to keep the stores, the shops, the towns, and the restaurants in a more convenient area, as opposed to spreading it thin throughout the neighborhoods and throughout the quieter neighborhoods where people are looking to just take solace in their home, in their neighborhood, in their cookouts, in their family activities and things like that, without having to, worry about, that convenience store is very busy for some reason, and there's a lot of hustle there in a quiet neighborhood where the people are walking dogs and people are, enjoying the quiet streets. So I think that it's just a natural, gravitational, makes more sense to put it in an area where there's parking, where we have, places of commerce that are generating business and dollars, and having the downtown in an area where that's that focus. And then the other focus just becomes more residential. I think it was just a natural evolution of that, just through supply and demand. I don't, have any other reasons for it. But
Yeah.
anyway.
I don't have an expert research-backed opinion on the matter, but I think I do have a personal opinion, just from my perspective living in the neighborhood of Plum Island. I love it. Well, I'll say this. I am committed to helping the few commercial businesses on Plum Island be as successful as possible, because we do have very few commercial businesses in the neighborhood of Plum Island. Some succeed, some don't succeed. There's a variety of reasons for that, I'm sure. But when I see a new business come to the island, I tell all my friends about it, I tell my family about it, and we try to support the businesses as much as possible, because commercial businesses enhances the lifestyle of the community, in my opinion. The fact that Olive's opened up a sister location called Lucy's on Plum Island now gives me and my kids a reason to go for a walk. We walk a half a mile from our house to Lucy's, they get a treat, I get a coffee, and we go on our merry day. But without the commercial business, we have less of a reason to be outdoors and be active and go for this walk, for example. I also love the idea of commercial businesses drawing people from outside of our community into our community to enjoy our community. Sunset Club is such a good example. Sunset Club is an establishment on Plum Island. Shout out to the owners. They've done such a great job. And I'm a supporter of all businesses. But Sunset Club is such a good example of bringing people outside of the community to the community solely for that one purpose of going to the commercial establishment. People will drive from Boston, specifically now, to go to Sunset Club. And they just happen to then realize, oh wow, what a great community Plum Island is. They wouldn't have gone to Plum Island if Sunset Club wasn't that draw. So I love the idea of commercial buildings, and here's the other thing. I think the ability for residents to build a business actually helps them build a lifestyle and grow their income to afford Newburyport or any other community. And if we restrict the ability to have commercial business or buildings, then of course it's got its positive effects, it's got its negative effects. I've got zero expert research-backed opinion on the matter. I can only speak from my personal experience on Plum Island.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Shout out to Derek for building Sunset Club. By the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
My man.
Yes. Yeah, it was a collaboration.
You get any special benefits when you go there? I'll have to go with you.
Always.
Take Eben and I.
They're great. They're great people. Yes. And so yeah, no, I think I was taking a different direction on that, but of course, the Sunset Club and Lucy's is amazing places, and in a neighborhood, it's a little bit different. We talked about Plum Island. I was just thinking to where you were going with it, with why is it, not that candy store and Stickney's, as you mentioned, there anymore. I think that sometimes in certain neighborhoods where things grew, and those schools, so we have the Brown School, right? And we have things like that, which are being repurposed. And we have other stores that were surrounding those areas. I don't know that, that we'll be bringing those back to that time where it's more like that. But I think that they are necessary and where they are, it should remain, because they do offer such a great sense of community where you can feed off of that stuff and enjoy your,
Yeah, obviously plopping a business smack in the middle of a South End neighborhood is different than on Plum Island, which is its own little world. But I think about that a lot. And my barber, who I've been going to for like 25 years, used to be my Little League baseball coach. He's like an old school Newburyport guy, and he lives in Byfield now. But he always, whenever I go to get my haircut, he talks to me about old Newburyport. And how when he was growing up, every neighborhood had their own school and had their own convenience store and their own doctor's office, and how there was a downtown, but I think he's talking about like in the 70s. And when he talks like this, it sounds rosy. It sounds like, wow, like what a neighborhood community, what tight-knit culture they had back then. Because, when I was growing up, there was a Kelly school, the Brown School in Bresnahan.
Sure.
And for him, there was like 9 schools scattered throughout the town. So what you get is a disunity. So maybe you don't feel like a communal city as much as you feel a sense of pride in your neighborhood, which is a whole different vibe than you have now. And it's not better or worse, it's just different. But there is something appealing about that.
Yeah.
And I think the real point here is that if we could control exactly what business would go into a residential neighborhood, then it would be great. But you can't. So if you were to open the doors to commercial development in the South End, out by West Newbury, wherever, you're opening the doors to anything going there. And that's, to your point, would spoil the neighborhood vibe. You're bringing in traffic that you don't want. And, so it can't always be an Olives. It can't always be a Lucy's or a Stickney's. That's what I think that was what the article and the rebuttal were talking about.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I want to close with a fun little game, which is one of the favorite articles I got. Proposed installing a community swimming pool in the industrial park.
Sold.
Got a lot of discussion. Personally, I love it. But what would be your dream infrastructure project in town? Something that you think the city needs, something that would be fun for the city to build, a service, could be anything. There's no wrong answers.
This is such a good question. I put zero thought into this question. No matter what my answer is, I'll be judged.
The swimming pool woman was judged pretty harshly, and I thought that was a great idea.
All right, this is a no judgment zone, so whatever our answers are, it's a no judgment zone.
No wrong answers.
So, okay, just to buy some time, can I ask you what yours would be?
I was going to cop out and say the swimming pool, because I love that, and I've actually been thinking about that for a long time. The question is where you put it. But I think a community pool. I watch those movies, those old like nostalgic movies from like the 80s, and they always have a community swimming pool, and all the kids are playing by the pool, like the Sandlot. I was always like, why don't we have one of those? We got the ocean. The ocean's different. It's not the same thing.
This is such a good question.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be a restaurant. It could be
Okay.
anything.
Well, I'm gonna give an answer.
All right.
Under the circumstance that no one judges me for my answer, I've always had this. Okay, let me back up. Throughout my travels, I've really gotten to enjoy beach clubs. I love socialization. I love beaches, and I love the idea. Like you see this a lot in Europe. I don't think it would be successful in New England. It's so seasonal. But let's just say you can make it successful, like where Georgie Porgy's was, for example. Imagine if you could have access to a beach club with amenities that they offer, a restaurant and vendors and music and canopies and huts and all that fun stuff, and it just existed in this little spot seasonally. I think, and you can bring your kids there, and they had games for your kids and access to the beach, and maybe even like a pool as part of the club, walking distance to and from the beach. I love a beach club. Now that I'm saying this out loud, it doesn't seem feasible.
Georgie Porgy's was just the ice cream, though, right?
It was,
that location.
But it was a commercial unit on the bottom, and I think one residential unit up top that's currently being used, I believe, as.
Did they do towel? Did they do any kind of amenities for beach related, or
Not
just,
that I'm
just
aware
the ice
of.
cream? Because that location is basically what you're talking about. Like that would be the spot for it.
I'm going to give you a second answer, but once Derek goes, I have to think of a good second answer.
Wow, I know, and hearing this is like,
It's a hard question to answer.
it's a very hard
Yeah.
question to answer.
Because we do have so much already.
We do. We have beautiful parks. We have beautiful places to play basketball and tennis, and a lot of outdoor activity with walking trails and rail trail. What else would this community?
You can say nothing. If you think it's perfect as is, we don't need anything.
Well, yeah, I'm just I don't have that colossal idea, But and the pool is an interesting idea too. And where would you put it? Would you need it near the water, or would you need it in the industrial park? I mean,
Would it be indoor or outdoor? Because here's the thing:
Outdoor.
as a parent, there's few things to do in the winter. Fewer things to do in the winter. And if there was a pool in town that I even had to pay for to go to, I'd probably bring my kids there just for them to use their energy. Like there's few
Yeah.
things to do.
The indoor makes a lot of sense.
With your kids in the wintertime.
The Y has a pool, but it's not really widely known,
Yeah, you're
or
right,
it's not,
actually.
doesn't have a community center vibe.
You're
For me to
right.
capture that nostalgia 80s movie feel, I needed to be outdoor. I needed to have like old school lifeguard, like the whole thing.
yeah.
But I'll let you out of answering the question if you give me your best spot for where to put a community pool. Where do you
Right.
think? Where do you think you could? I think the industrial park makes sense because there's a lot of space, but I don't know. I think right on the waterfront would be pretty sick.
I was gonna say
But-
I live in dreamland, so like I love the idea of it being along the water somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know where you fit it.
I don't
There's
know.
probably no space to fit it,
Yeah.
but that would be fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Got the gears turning.
Yeah, definitely. It needs to be outside and definitely needs to be near the water. There's got to be,
At my
what's-
beach club, put it at the beach club.
yeah, there was. Didn't we have out on Plum Island at the end where the red roof is? There was some kind of
Oh,
Do you mean on the center where
Pool.
Porgy's was?
all the way down the end by Captain's Lady.
yeah.
On that out there by the parking lot, there was a pool
I have an idea.
that was out there at one point, and I think it was used for. I believe it was used for a long time ago medical purposes for
Okay.
children and pool therapy.
Okay.
And it was a community pool but it was out there. I know it was out
Okay,
there.
so you're saying there's
There's a
possible venue.
there's a possible venue.
Okay, this is good.
I would like to change my answer. I'm changing my answer to an outdoor drive-in movie theater.
That's good.
An
That
outdoor
is
drive-in
good.
movie theater.
Yep.
It's my new
When I
answer.
was living in Colorado for a bit, there was an outdoor movie theater, and it just talk about nostalgia. Like
much
that
fun?
was incredible.
Imagine.
Yeah, because the closest one I think is in New Hampshire. It's like maybe 45 minutes away. But
That's my new answer. Scratch the beach club.
Okay. Bach Beach.
It's a lot more fun.
I already started planning.
We
Okay.
we try and do one every year. I don't know if you guys knew that with NYS from town.
Oh, yeah?
They do a
didn't
in
know
the
this.
fall.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
So you guys drive-in?
Yeah. It's they do a fundraiser, and down in that parking lot at the end on Plum Island by the lighthouse.
Oh, I do know that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I do. Yeah, I do know that. Yeah.
But it's a seasonal, it's a fundraiser. It's 2 nights. Friday night is usually for the older kids, and Saturday, which vice versa, whatever. We usually do one that shows like Goonies,
Nice.
and then the other one that would show like a Pixar movie,
Yeah.
some kind of cartoon movie. But
Eben and I will be there
that's-
this year.
Yeah.
I love it. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Now you do that every summer?
It's in the fall.
the fall.
Normally in September. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, the high property taxes, this is what it gets you.
Yes.
You drive in
Information.
movies. You get,
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a good time, weather
Yeah.
permitting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for coming on. This has been great. Thanks, everyone, for listening, watching Between the Lines. I want to thank Sean and Derek, and also Sarah Hayden from NCM Studios, as well as Maeve, our producer. And we'll see you guys next month. Thanks.